Welcome to the Scarfey Spurs podcast. I've called an emergency podcast unexpectedly. Well, they say that, several people thought that we'd be already having this conversation even last year, but it's happened now. Thomas Frank has been sacked by Tottenham Hotspur. It is official. Tottenham are managerless, and we will be discussing plenty of things, of course, with this being the biggest, but also Enic and the board. Have they failed Thomas Frank and the job that they are doing? So plenty to discuss because, of course, there's pressure on upstairs. Johan Langer, for example, Vinay, have gone with this call, but they will take a lot of responsibility. So, plenty to discuss. Interim manager, who comes in? Pochettino, will he return in the summer? Are we really at risk of relegation? Are we less or more now Frank has gone? I'll not shy away from the difficult questions tonight, and joining me to answer some of these questions and have these big and bold conversations, I have three fantastic guests. Let's introduce them then one by one, starting with Charlie Pisani, 14-year-old, incredible Spurs YouTuber. Charlie, how you doing?
I am really, really good. Thomas Frank has been fired. He deserved it. He is the worst manager we've ever had. The worst manager I've ever seen at Tottenham. I remember when we hired this guy, or just when we sacked Dan. I remember being on the Chris Cowlin fan show, which I'll be going on later on tonight. And I said, why have we sacked Dan? Do you want a trophy and we sack a manager? Or bring in Thomas Frank? He's won nothing. And you know what? A few days later, I said, yeah, I come to terms with it. I want Thomas Frank at the club. And you know what? I shouldn't have. Because every time this club gets a new manager, us fans, we get all optimistic. And we're like, yeah, new manager, we're going to do so well. And no, I'm not having it anymore, right? I'm hearing De Zerbi as the favourite for the job. No, I will not get behind Roberto De Zerbi. Look, I'll support the team and I hope we win games. That's what I want, all right? But I want Pochettino back in the summer. That is the absolute. All right, I do not want any other manager at this football club other than Mauricio Pochettino. This was the worst appointment we've ever made. The worst appointment. I've never seen anyone worse. I've never seen us lose so many games except for last season. But last season we won a trophy. We got winning a trophy under Frank. We're at the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. And look, realistically, we're not going to win the Champions League. We've never been this close to the relegation battle in my life. Right, we might have come 17th last year, but we were never this close to the relegation battle. But look, we've got a lot of talking points tonight, so I'm going to wait to bring up all my points, but I am very, very happy. Thomas Frank is gone. He is the worst manager I've ever seen.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. Passion shining through there. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Big news, of course, with Thomas Frank being sacked. Mikey, thank you so much, for coming on. Remind people a bit about what you do, because, of course, with what you do, this is huge for you, and ultimately you're very busy at this time. But thank you for coming on.
No, you're welcome. Happy to be here. Obviously, Frank's been sacked. Been busy all day. I was at work this morning on my way to work when I got the news, and I was itching to get back and start writing my article, which is almost finished. I'm just finishing up the Pochettino section of the article, which I'm sure we'll come on to later. And it's been a very busy day for me.
Definitely, absolutely crazy one, I'm sure. Mikey, thank you so much. And Dustin, thank you. 2 a.m. your time in Singapore. So I say it every time, but on this note, especially thank you so much for your commitment. Difficult times at the club, massive day. So thank you for staying up for it all and, talking to us. How you doing?
All right. I think it's been something that we have been, some fans have been anticipating. I think that we have been circling the toilet for quite a few weeks. Some might even say months now. So I think it's time that we finished flushing and get to what we need to do to stay up.
Okay, thank you very much. And guys listening live on YouTube, please do get involved in the chat. Let us know how you feel right now as a Tottenham fan. I'm sure there's lots of emotions going through you, but what stands out to you the most, please let us know in the comments below. If you're listening by audio podcast platform, drop us a follow and a 5-star review. You can still get in touch. Drop me an email, scarfharry323@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. How do you feel right now? What direction should the club go in? Are you concerned but by the direction, the ambition of this football club? So let's start then, because you got the big news this morning that Thomas Frank has been dismissed in his role. So we'll go through now and read out the club statement, which as follows. If I bring it up, if it allows me to, we'll read out the club statement, because ultimately, we always look, don't we, for club statements to find out, what has been said and who's put their name to it. So I think the club statement is always important, but here it is. They said the club has today taken the decision to make a change in the men's head coach position, and Thomas Frank will leave today. Thomas was appointed in June 2025, and we've been determined to give him the time and support needed to build for the future together. However, results and performances have left the board to conclude that a change at this point in the season is necessary. Dustin, coming back to you, because I don't want to start with you on this. So the club statement then. Usually you often get a name at the bottom. It would be Vinay, Johan Langer, and in the past, Daniel Levy. Nobody's names on here. That suggests to me that nobody's taken responsibility for this decision. But what do you make of the statement as a whole? I mean, it's short, but, quite, I think gets to the point and, it's quite, I suppose, quite honest.
It feels like a statement that a PR agency drafted, and you don't even get the joy of a Coy's Daniel there. So look, I think it's a statement that had to be made. I don't think it says very much. I think that there's a lot of mealy-mouthed kind of, oh, we are ambitious, we want to do stuff in the window, we're determined to give him time, support needed for the future. What kind of support did you give him in the transfer window when he had players out? And over the course of the window, we lost more players to long-term injuries, and now we've lost Wilson Odobert as well. So the club can say all they want about support and competing on all fronts, but we don't look at words, we look at actions, and their actions have not matched up to what they've promised.
Absolutely, so true. Dustin, thank you very much. You've got an awful lot to get into in that department. But Mikey, coming to you, your thoughts on this statement and also your reaction. I'm still going to say it's breaking news because it's not that many hours ago now. It's still very raw. So what's your reaction at this moment to Frank being sacked?
My reaction 8.5 hours ago when I got the Tottenham Tears bombshell before the David Ornstein bombshell came through is the same. I think it was the right decision, perhaps an overdue one. Clubs know that once February 1st comes, there's no more player trading, as Vinay calls it. There's no more ins and outs. Once the 1st of February, the only way to save your season in terms of on the pitch is a hire or fire from the manager's point of view. So once that deadline comes, there's no turning back. You have to be happy with the players you have. You can go and sign Raheem Sterling as a free agent all you want, but ultimately none of the best players are available as free agents for a reason. So it looks like the decision was made with tactical ineptitude. Again, going after the January transfer window. So even if a new face did come in, they've not been given the tools to succeed. So it will be likely an interim. And the statement itself reeks of, again, a PR agency, they've been very, very key to assure everyone that that the manager was given the backing as long as they possibly could. But the situation became untenable. I think they've reluctantly sacked him. Thomas Frank appears to be a yes man, and this board don't like being called out, a la Antonio Conte. And it's kind of left us in a situation where, again, every fan brings up every time, but this was supposed to be a new era, and it's somehow got worse, and I don't know how.
Okay, Mikey, thank you very much for starting off just lightly here. Charlie, I know because we've had debates on air, off air, reasonable conversations. I know that you were very keen for Thomas Frank to leave this club. I on the other end of the scale, and I know that you're happy now he's gone. But how do you sum up, your thoughts now he has gone? I know that you're happy, but explain why you think this is the right decision, and did you expect to see it today?
Honestly, no, I didn't expect to see it today. I want to start on that because last night I heard his interview where he goes, I am 1,000% sure that I will be in job for the Arsenal game. And I was thinking, what do you mean you're 1,000% sure? I wasn't angry at Frank. I was angry at Vinay. I was thinking, hang on a minute. Why is he going to be in charge for the Arsenal game? We lose every single week. We're 16th. At the time, I think, of the interview, we were 3 points clear of the relegation zone. It was taking the absolute mick. All right, I want to come on to the club statement as well in a minute, but I was fuming. And then obviously this morning I said I was in a history class. I had my laptop out. I think, I'll type up Thomas Frank, bam, Sky Sports, Thomas Frank sacked. I started cheering. I was absolutely delighted. I didn't expect to after that interview. No, I don't know why the board would say that to me if they didn't mean it. But look, I can't say I'm not happy. You said you're going to come onto the board later on in this, and Enic later on in this discussion. But Honestly, Thomas Frank came on top of all these other managers. How we did, I don't know. I think he's an atrocious manager who isn't made for big clubs. He was the worst appointment we ever made. We should have never, ever, ever sacked Ange Postecoglou. If it was my way, I'd have him back tomorrow, Big Ange. I love that guy. He's obviously on the overlap tomorrow, but you know what? I'd cancel the overlap tomorrow and I'll be having him doing the training sessions. Love Big Ange. Amazing guy. But yeah, you know, it came out with managers. They said they tried to give him time. What they said in that part of the statement was absolutely true. They gave him all the time they could. It was a joke how bad we were, and I'm delighted he's gone. But on this manager and time thing, no, I do not want to give another manager time unless it's Mauricio Pochettino. In the future, this time, how often do you see a manager going to who's relatively new, who hasn't had major achievements at the club, like Pochettino did, reaching the Champions League final, like Ange Postecoglou winning the Europa League? Have you ever seen the manager go into that down period and come back up the other end? Look at Arne Slot at Liverpool. He isn't bouncing back. They're just getting worse and worse and worse as the weeks go on. Ultimately, we all know it. Eventually, he's going to get sacked. I think deep down, we all knew it. Eventually, Frank was going to get sacked. Whether that was sooner, as in right now, which has happened. It should have been way sooner. I'm watching a Ben Bowman video from the 11th of November where he was saying, you know, we should fire him straight after the Arsenal game. And he's completely right saying that. But, you know, we waited too long. It should have been the West Ham game he was gone when fans were seeing sacked in the morning, because that was a disgrace. But I said when I come to the club statement, I find that, I think parts of it were really good. They're very right. They gave him all the time they could, because this time nonsense. Frank's achieved nothing in his managerial career. He's achieved as much as me.
Well,
come on,
I'm gonna have to chip in here, right? Listen, he took Brentford, just to step in, mid-table in the Championship. He took them to get into the playoffs, then to the Premier League, then to stay up, then to become a stable club. He left them in 10th position. They finished 10th under his position. And then Keith Andrews, in my view, has learned from Thomas Frank. Yes, Thomas Frank has not done a good job at Tottenham, but I think he's got a lot to shout about for the job he done at Brentford with a negative net spend, just in my view.
I don't agree with that. I think he does the wrong appointment.
I think it's more Brentford than Frank, because if you see a post on Twitter by a Brentford fan, he's saying that Brentford makes coaches look good, because he goes back to Uli Rosler, who did well at Brentford. Then he was like, I'm doing quite well. I should go to a bigger club. And he went to Wigan and then failed, and then is now managing not even in the Bundesliga, but like, second or third tier in Germany. Then they went on to Mark Warburton, who also was their director of football at the time, who had no previous coaching experience, and then he brought them up. And then Dean Smith took over, and he brought them up again. So every time Brentford has sacked their coach, or their coach has gotten too big for Brentford and left, Brentford has always replaced them with someone with no coaching experience, and they've done even better. So at this point, it's starting to look like a trend that Brentford as a club has a system that works so well, and it works even better when they put in a coach with no experience, because a coach with no experience can do it within their budget, doesn't demand players and everything, because, they've basically got this system where, like, the system works, don't screw with it, just do what you need, which is the coaching. And in Brentford, the coach is a little cog that does everything, and so much of what they do well is part of their system. I believe that Brighton is actually a similar thing, where you've seen Brighton managers leave and go to bigger clubs and then not do well there. So I believe that Brentford and Brighton are two clubs where it's very hard to say that this manager is a good manager because he's done well at the club. Sometimes you gotta go, maybe the club has a great system and they do a good job of putting managers that have the right attributes to help them succeed, and after the managers leave and go to another club, they don't do quite as well.
Dustin, I completely agree with that. I went to watch Brentford play against Liverpool this season at the game. One of my friends invited me. He's a Brentford season ticket holder. And I have to say, I'd expect a team like Brentford, when they go 1-0 up after 4 minutes, they're going to sit back for the rest of the game and try and hold on to that lead. No, they kept going. They kept pushing them. They kept pushing Liverpool. In the end, they won 3-2. They kept going. They never stopped. And that's what I love. Frank doesn't do that. My friend said to me, I watched Frank at Tottenham. I compare it to Brentford. He starts the games at Tottenham like how he'd play when we're 1-0 up. So he's trying to hold on to a 0-0 draw. You're trying to tell me, he was such a bad appointment, such a bad coach. I do not like him. I want to come to the club statement quickly. I know I have absolutely yapped on for ages here, But this is big news. I sent you a message about 11 o'clock last night. I just got in the car from the Spurs game. Booked me in for an emergency podcast tomorrow when Thomas Frank is sacked. You know, I'm the next Fabrizio Romano. I've called it. I've absolutely called it. The club statement, though, I expect them to be putting a name in there. Right, this person's going to be taking training for the next few days until we appoint someone. This person's going to have the rest of the season. No, we don't have a manager. We are managerless. It's embarrassing. And, you know, I'm sure later on we're going to come on to possible interims. And I tell you what, I've got a whole list for that. I'm going to yappa on in there as well. But yeah, you know, I thought at least, you know, Johnny Heitinga will be taking over, who I imagine we don't need the statement for that. I think he will be taking training tomorrow. Obviously, Jorgensen hasn't been sacked. Cochrane hasn't been sacked. It's just Thomas Frank, and he deserves it.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's actually been a report, that they've given the players the week off while they make the decision. The players have been given
5 days,
off, 5 days off, so they won't make it. While they make the decision, the players are going to be free to do what they want, and training won't resume until Monday next week.
That is a joke. That is a joke. They should be training double the hours the way they've played this season. It's disgraceful. It's embarrassing. They should be doing double hours, in my opinion. They shouldn't be getting paid.
with the amount of fit players we've got, I don't actually mind the decision. I don't actually mind the.
These players have absolutely no respect. You know, if I was the manager tomorrow, I wouldn't go in there. If I was, they'd probably look at me and laugh at me as a 14-year-old boy. Do you know what I'd say? No. How dare you laugh at me? I'd go, Basuma, you are released. You are not a Tottenham Hotspur player. I'd just say, you want to mess around with me? I will really destroy you. And you know what? I wouldn't pay Basuma off. I wouldn't pay these players. I would say, get out. I don't want you at the club. You're embarrassing to Tottenham. I'm a Tottenham fan, right? Now I'm a coach. You lot are gone. You're going to listen to what I say and you're going to win football matches, or you're going to get it. You're going to be working double the hours. I'm willing to break that contract. I'm so fed up of it. All these managers. I want Pochettino back in the summer, and that is it. All right. We'll end there, and we'll come on to interim managers soon, and I'll talk about that.
No, that's a good way to end. Listen, Charlie, if it's down to me, I think I'd be pointing you as manager, because if you have that amount of passion, you know, and wanted to win as much as you do, then I think you'll be all right.
I'd be appointing Dustin.
You have said in the past. That is very true. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to just give my opinion very briefly.
I'll be his assistant.
That's a good idea. You can do that. Let's give my very brief opinion on Thomas Frank, because when I put my opinions out there, I accept the criticism that comes my way, and my position has stayed for pretty much the same. And again, I have to take responsibility for that. In my view, I just would like to say I wish him all the best. Firstly, I don't think enough people will do that. In my view, given no support by the hierarchy in January, I still do not think he's the main problem. However, you cannot sugarcoat it. He wasn't a Tottenham Hotspur manager, doesn't represent Tadarius Adu, and you simply cannot idolise Arsenal every week and play for draws. You just can't do that. It doesn't get you anywhere. But there are some damning statistics for Thomas Frank before we move on to the board and Enic, who need to be held accountable for me. There's a lot to discuss here, and it's pretty damning for Thomas Frank. The first one, not quite as damning, but ultimately, this is his record after 8 months as Spurs head coach. When I say not as damning, it includes Europe as well. So 38 games, the Dane's been in charge at Spurs, 13 wins, 10 draws and 15 losses, 62 goals scored, 54 conceded, out of the FA Cup and League Cup, 16th in the Premier League, but in the Champions League knockouts after finishing 4th in the league phase. Mikey, how do you summarise his time at Tottenham? Because statistically, he's the worst ever Tottenham manager, but ultimately we are still in Europe, but we're not competing on all fronts, which was a dream we were sold.
Yeah, I mean, competing on all fronts was a big part of Vinay's monthly messages when he was sitting plush in the middle of the summer in his nice little polo shirt on training pitch number 8 or whatever it was, just chilling, talking to the camera. And we're now in a situation where genuinely, if it wasn't for Benjamin Šeško, we would have been 3 points off relegation. And again, all eyes are on the Nottingham Forest game, when all eyes realistically should be on the Sunderland and Liverpool game for us. But it's not. It's on the Nottingham Forest Wolves game, which is a damning indictment in itself. But yeah, you look at that win record, 13 wins out of 38, which is, that's not great. And even if you take out the Champions League, he's got a 27% win record, which is statistically the worst manager in the top 6 in Premier League, not even for Tottenham, in the Premier League. And I think he's the worst Tottenham manager in the 3 points for a win era, which spans 50, 60 years now, which is just awful. It is genuinely awful. I haven't haven't been as vocal, let's say, as perhaps someone like Charlie is about my hatred for the man, which I don't have. I think he's a very nice guy. That
I don't
counts
hate
for
him.
absolutely
Hate's a very
nothing.
powerful word. I don't think he's a very good manager, okay? He seems like
Fair.
a lovely guy, all right? I've got nothing to get. If I met him, I'd ask for a photo and I'd be all nice, all right? I wouldn't be like I am here. He's the worst manager I've ever had. I'd be saying, I'd be a bit nicer. I don't hate him. I just think he's not a great coach.
Fair. All right, I'll retract that in the interests of fairness. I'll say that he's not. I am not as outspoken about my dislike of him as a coach. However, I am willing to put my bollocks on the line here and say that I do think he is, in my lifetime as well. I'm 22 years old now. I've watched Tottenham since the days of Redknapp, and I will say, yeah, him and Nuno are kind of side by side for me as the most uninspiring and kind of the worst tenants of a Tottenham head coach position that I've seen in a while. And I was also I've just recently been reading the Athletics in-depth dive on Thomas Frank, and they've basically summarized that the players just did not respect Frank because they would run through brick walls. I'm not even paraphrasing. They'd run through brick walls for Ange Postecoglou, and they just didn't feel that same level of respect for Thomas Frank, which, again, doesn't even surprise me. And you can see the graphic on there. I'm looking up and down the win percentage rate, and you've got Santini, who was there for not even that many games. So is worse points per game, worse win percentage. It is just staggering, really, isn't it? Just looking at that, it's staggering how bad of a manager we've landed ourselves with. And I don't know where we go from here. Obviously, everyone's banding about Pochettino and De Zerbi and Xavi Hernandez and Ryan Mason 3.0 run it back. But at this point, I'm not even concerned about the manager. I'm just concerned as a trajectory of the club. Is this our reality now? That's a serious conversation. Is it our reality now?
That's definitely a conversation that we'll be coming on to away from Frank, because there are serious concerns. I have more concerns, if I'm honest with you, after today. Whatever the job that Frank's done, I have concerns who's going to come in and whether going to steady the ship or sink it even further. So for me as a Spurs fan, I'd say I'm more worried after today, but I know the vast majority feel different. For me, I just feel that we need someone to steady the ship. We need someone that bleeds Tottenham, but that's a conversation for just a few minutes. Dustin, I'll come to you. Something I mentioned earlier, and it needs mentioning, Thomas Frank idolising Arsenal, almost like a fetish, right? It's become a little bit of a concern, let's just say. For me, I understand that you want to achieve to be a club that competes on all fronts. That should be the goal for Tottenham. That's what we've been sold by him, by the board, by Enic, by Vinay, you name it, Johan Langer. They've all said the same thing. Paratici, when he's here, to compete on all four fronts. Use Arsenal as a one-off example. You shouldn't be idolising them, though. We're Tottenham Hotspur, and you can't idolise Arsenal, then be playing for draws and play like Tranmere Rovers, and that's being kind every single week. So, Dustin, what do you make of this? I mean, he constantly does go on about Arsenal. I don't think there's anything necessary to this, but the point is you can't do that as Tottenham Hotspur manager.
Well, he is an Arsenal fan, right? There's a tweet that I saw, which is like lots of interviews he gave as Brentford manager, where he was essentially noshing off Arsenal. Saliba's the best centre back in the league, and Saka is so good. So it's clear that there's a strong admiration for them. Although I think there is an element of needing to read the room if they're going to coach their fiercest rivals, to not keep telling the team we should aspire to be more like them, or they're so good. It can be true. It's just not the best thing to say when it's your fiercest rival. I'm sure that that a Liverpool manager isn't going to them saying, "Man, you are so good," right? And a Madrid manager isn't noshing off Barcelona in the dressing room. So there is an element of, it's good to have models and teams that you aspire to, but there's a way of communicating that without making it incredulous to the point that members of staff are sharing pictures of the cup. And I think one of the most fascinating things about Cupgate was the picture of him holding the cup, and a member of staff with his eyes bugging out looking at the cup going, "What are you holding?" Right. So there's a certain lack of self-consciousness or certain lack of introspection there. But broadly speaking, we have an ex-Arsenal CEO and an Arsenal fan as manager. So I'm not saying it's Agent Vinay, Agent Frank, job done, but if you're looking for a way to torpedo Spurs, I can't think of better execution than what's being done right now.
Absolutely. In my view, I just think Frank's a bad communicator. If you look at him yesterday, I mean, anyone that follows politics without getting political, it just felt like, you were listening to something like, Starmer yesterday froze on the spot and, realizing they're going through a difficult time and fearing for their job, maybe both in a similar boat. Frank's, if they've been the one that's been fired ultimately first, he's gone, he's out, and he has less of a say, let's just say. It's not down to him. But no, listen, in all seriousness, Frank, just when you don't communicate in the right way, you don't stand a chance. And he took the approach of, in my view, sucking up to the board and the owners, which kept him in the job, I think, for so long and made him lose the fans so quickly. That was, for me, a huge part of it. And then that changed yesterday, where he said everyone at the club has to take responsibility. These were Frank's words. It's not just me. And that, for me, felt a turning point. I listened to that, I thought, actually, this is a tiny, tiny hint about upstairs. And he's been hinting now for the last couple of games about that he wasn't happy with January. So ultimately, I think when you change that approach, you suffer as a consequence. But a couple of more Frank stats when we move on to, it's still again in topic of Frank, of course, because that's our main talking point. But I want to discuss potential managerial replacements because we've got to consider who's going to come in, interim, permanent, and who it's going to be. But a few stats here then. So last 10 Tottenham managers, again, Thomas Frank, the stats there are not pretty for him. And if you look at the last 6 as well, I mean, Thomas Frank, 38 games, 1.29 points per game. That's lower than Ange Postecoglou. It's lower than Conte. It's lower than Nuno, Mourinho, Pochettino, you name it. So it's not good reading for Thomas Frank. It's really not good reading for Thomas Frank at all. Charlie, so summarize that's appropriate PG, let's just say, Thomas Frank's time at Tottenham. How do you view it? Is it as disastrous as some people make out?
No, I don't think it's as disastrous as people make out. I think it's worse. I think he's the worst manager you've ever had. Statistically, my argument is supported. Sorry if my last one wasn't PG then. I mean, I tried to keep it all calm.
No, it was. No, I'm just saying. I know you feel strongly about Frank, so I just wanted to...
He's a lovely guy, When Nuno, I don't think any of us like Nuno as a coach. And a few days later, one of my dad's friends, he was in his building, and they were all taking pictures of him. And apparently, he was such a lovely guy. And I'm sure Frank is as well. Every time at Brentford, he goes and sees that little boy. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but football isn't about making friends. It's about winning, and that's what I want to see. I want to see us win. We're not winning. We lose every week. I kept telling my friends, Arsenal aren't going to win the league because City are going to beat you, and you've still got to come to the lane. I'm sure up until earlier today, they're all laughing about coming to the lane. Oh, we're going to smash them. They've got an Arsenal fan in charge of our club. All this stuff about Arsenal. It's a joke. Apparently, the players are being shown the AI pictures of him in the Arsenal tops. He's going to be looking at them thinking, yeah, that is exactly how I want my room to look. With Arsenal wallpaper, Arsenal duvet, Arsenal PJs. It should never been the manager. I don't think the Vinay thing. Vinay, look, he's ex-Arsenal CEO, but ultimately Emmanuel Adebayor was ex-Arsenal player. I'm not looking for ex-Arsenal. He's an Arsenal fan. It's unacceptable. To be the manager of Tottenham and be an Arsenal fan, are you joking? Vinay deals with other stuff, not coaching the team. You can't be showing the players all this Arsenal stuff. I think it's been a disaster, an absolute disaster. I don't want to yap on like I did last time. I'm very excited to talk about potential replacements because I've got quite a few in mind actually that I'd like. I mean, I've got who I don't want, who I'm okay with, and then Pochettino, who I absolutely want, and he is the only man I want. After August, he should be the manager, guaranteed. I do. No one else. But there are a few names that I'm sort of like, if we get them, then I'm not going to be too upset. But
Okay, sure. That's fine. You've made it clear, Charlie. Thank you very much. And before we do get on to those managerial replacements, and several names are linked. Several people put their neck on the line and gone, look, boom, we'd take it, such as Harry Redknapp, for example, and Tim Sherwood both suggest we'd accept the job and come in. Particularly Redknapp was very strong on his word and with that, very keen to get involved. But I want to talk about Enic and the board. Mikey, if I come back to you, right, do you believe that Frank was given a bad hand? Was he let down in January? He's very vocal about his support of the Lewis family. Enic very keen, of course, to keep them happy and to remain in post, remain in his position. But it didn't really work out for him because it doesn't look like anyway on paper that we've done enough in January at this stage. So for you, how much of a factor has that had that we didn't deliver in January?
It's obvious. It's been massive. I don't think we can limit. I mean, the one factor that Frank has as a mitigating factor is the injuries. Now, whether that's, again, we all kind of had the gimmick last year about his training methods and everything, but we've been consistently getting injuries for a number of years now, to the point where I'm starting to think, is it the pitches is it the pitch at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with the retractable surface? Is that having with the undersaw stuff, is that having an impact? Is it the training pitches? Is it the fact that all of our players' muscles are made out of string cheese? What's the issue that our players keep getting injured? And until that's addressed, until the root causes found, there has to be a proper internal investigation into this. I can't stress enough how bad the injuries have scuppered Frank. And I still have, I'm still of the opinion he should have gone. I think even with the tools at his disposal, he's done subpar. At Brentford, it was made of the fact that he can do a lot with very little. And at Spurs, he's done a little with very little. And I think it's not a manager's job to keep their players, it's not a manager's job to keep an eye on their players so they don't get injured 24 hours a day. You can't account for that. And injuries are a big part of any club. But even we would admit that this injury crisis we're in at the moment is unprecedented. I think it's 7 3-month plus injuries we've suffered this season, which is already like an insane amount. The attack especially has been scuppered, and setting Brennan Johnson and it being compounded by Kudus getting injured 3 days later and still having an entire 3-week period without being able to sign someone, without signing anyone that we need is it's inexcusable. So yes, I have sympathy for Frank in terms of the injuries, but his tactical style, yes, that's a graph I saw earlier. You can see just how, even under Ange, the amount of players we've had out, it was bad, but it wasn't this bad for a sustained period of time. It's gone up and down, and we've been so unlucky with the areas. We've had all 3 of our right wingers injured or sold. We've had multiple, and the only area which we do have enough depth in is in defensive midfield, and that was the area we decided to buy in January. And I'm not,
Mikey, sorry to interrupt, right? This is not my opinion, but to play devil's advocate for the sake of it, a lot of fans will look at that, and I think you're right, by the way, but a lot of fans would look at that and go, and you're right, not as many and not for as long. However, he was out without the back four most of the time, whereas under Frank we've had both centre backs fit most of the time. Not they've got injured some of the time, yes, but he's had both Romero and Van der Ven fit as Frank, but Ange didn't. That's the, I suppose, counter to your argument.
That's exactly what I'm saying, though. That's when I say that the injuries have been bad, but he's still done very little with the little he's had. The attack's been scuppered. Obviously, Ange ball was based on attack, and having his attackers fit would have benefited Ange Postecoglou because he is an attack-first manager. So having your attack fit would enable him to play a style of play, perhaps, obviously, without the defensive security, the pace of Van der Ven, the aggression of Romero. And I appreciate the counter-argument, but I would still say that he had his most important players available for most of the season, and that was Heung-min Son, Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski before his injuries in the second half. James Maddison, when he was fit as well, was able to play. And we've had none of those creative players that Thomas Frank ball relies on. I remember watching a James Lawrence Alcott video, which I also watched his Frank video, which was very, very insightful. And he spoke about the fact that Kulusevski and Maddison will both be amazing 10 profiles for Frank, and then both of them got injured. Xavi Simons is a great player, but he doesn't fit the kind of 10 that made Mikkel Damsgaard, for example, so successful at Brentford, or someone like Matthias Jensen is not the same kind of player. And even though he is a better player, that's where I say that Frank has done very little with what he's had, but the injuries have also contributed to why we've been so bad. But even when he's had players fit, he hasn't been able. Like, when we played Archie Gray, like we've got Jed Spence, who's a natural right back, and Sousa, who's a natural left back. We've got them available, and he's played Spence at left back and played Gray at right back. And I don't think Gray is a bad player, but he's a midfielder first. And we've got a fullback sitting on the bench who wasn't bad against Man United, and he still didn't pick or play him. Now, whether that's to do with familiarity, minutes, whatever, we're in a situation where we can't afford not to play the players that we have and to still play Archie Gray, who's played a lot of minutes in the last couple of seasons as a young kid. You know, we saw with Pedro Porro eventually, even the players who played the most amount of minutes are going to get injured at some point. And Sousa needs to build confidence, etc. I just think it was a missed opportunity not to play Sousa and Spence as a fullback pairing when he's got them available.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good point. Square pegs and round holes, I don't think, is necessary sometimes, even when you're down to the bare bones. Use the academy, play players in their natural position. Definitely couldn't agree more, Mikey. Thank you. I'm going to ask two fairly quick fire questions, then before we move on, and I'm just going to give it to one of you, and one to one and one to the other. Charlie, do you think Johan Lange should follow Frank ultimately and be sacked?
Yeah, I do heavily. Look at Villa. Since he's gone, they've only got better.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the quick fire answer. Dustin, if I come to you, does it concern you that Vinay's left Arsenal, they've improved? Johan Lange's left Villa, they've improved. Thomas Frank's left Brentford, they've improved. All while they've all joined Tottenham and we've got worse. Is that just a coincidence or do they all need to go?
So I think that we've let Frank go, but I think that the process that actually is the process that hired Frank that needs to be fired, because it's already clear that he wasn't a match for our style of play. And whenever you have a manager that's not a match for the style of play, it means that the fans have less patience with the manager. So we've had, worse. Well, we haven't really had worse results statistically speaking, but we've endured, bad managers, bad runs, bad results. But if we've seen attacking play and we've seen, a style of play that there's something to hold on to, even when we endure losses, we've always had more patience with that because that's the Tottenham way. So that's a reality that we should account for when we pick a manager. And part of the reason we've had such long rebuilds is because we've gone, Poch, attacking manager, high pressing, whatever, and then you switch to Mourinho, different style of play. Switch to Conte, different style of play. And we vacillate between the different managing styles. And then as a result, we have like a season and a half, 2 seasons worth of rebuilding, like selling all the players that don't fit the new manager or that were very specific to the old manager. So for me, the biggest thing that the club needs to do is whoever picks the next long-term manager, the director of football needs to be in place for that. We can't just go, and part of this was like the CEO going, I wanted to pick him and then show the patience I had with Arteta, with this guy. But how do you know you chosen the right manager, right? Patience is a virtue if it's given to the right person. But you're not a football guy. You're not part of the director of football business. You don't understand squad building. Who are you to make the decision about who you should be sticking with? So in my view, what needs to be fixed is the director of football process, getting a right director of football in that does all the squad planning, because it's a mess. We don't have enough homegrown slots, we don't have enough club trained slots, we didn't register the full complement of players we could have because we didn't get all of these squad things in balance. And a proper squad building means you have 2 players minimum for every position, and not the same age competing with each other, because look at like Alderweireld and Tell, they're the same age, same profile, competing with each other for minutes. You don't know who's first choice, and it's not good. You need to have a clear first choice, a deputy, and ideally a youth team player in that same position, and they can help develop each other. The deputy keeps the first choice, like nipping at its heels. So it should be competitive enough that the first choice player still helps his deputy, because that gives him a break, he gets rotation, he gets a rest. But it should also be competitive enough that the first choice player always feels like he needs to play to his best. Otherwise, the deputy is going to take him over. But we don't have any of that. We just have, we signed Conor Gallagher, which is probably our best player in that position, but we have 4 players in that position already. We've got Gray, we've got Sar, right? We have Bergval, and we have Paulinia, which is slightly different profile, but we have 4 players that do that box-to-box role, and we signed Gallagher. And we didn't sign a progressive passer down the middle, which is the profile we actually needed. So
Yeah.
it's the overall process of like director of football, and if we look at Brentford, like how we talked about Brentford earlier, they can change their manager and they seem to do even better. That's because they have a process where the manager is a small cog in the big machine, and the big machine does all of that planning and thinking. So even if they lose the manager, it's like, fine, we'll just use the set piece coach and he'll do even better.
Dustin, you make some excellent points there. You're absolutely right. Squad planning continuing to cost Tottenham. Thank you. Absolutely spot on. And I also think someone who's spot on is a YouTube comment here, Nugget, who says all of them have to go. And the owners, what we're seeing unfold is 25 years of neglect. Time for Enic to call a day. I absolutely agree. If Frank's going to go, so should Johan Langer, so should the Ball, and so should Enic and the Lewis family. You know, show some ambition for the first time and leave the club. That's what's showing the most ambition for the club with them not being there. Let me absolutely tell you that. Mikey, I'm going to ask again another quick fire question. If you can have a quick answer, that'd be great. Should Tottenham have stuck with Ange Postecoglou? Should we have given him that 3rd season? Did he earn the right after winning the Europa League trophy? Because at Tottenham, we sack managers for getting to finals. We sack them for not winning anything. We sack them for getting in a title fight. You know, you couldn't write it. And we also sack someone for winning the trophy. You just can't win.
I am not someone who is a Levy agreeist or apologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I actually think it was the correct decision to get rid of Ange when we did. I know Charlie is vociferously disagreeing with that, but I don't think the domestic form could be ignored. I really don't. I know he won the European trophy and he put all his eggs in the basket, and that's good. Obviously, competing on all fronts is what we wanted to do, and we simply couldn't. So he chose the Europa League, and I'm very grateful for that fact. But it was just, the fan base was still, there was people, it was split as it is now. Maybe not as, it was unanimous under Frank that people wanted him to go, but the fan base was split on Ange Postecoglou. I think he knew his time was coming to an end. I know that the famous quote, he said, "One day you'll replace me with John the Pragmatist and you'll all be laughing." And now obviously we've replaced him and it hasn't gone well. I think what went wrong was was his successor rather than his sacking. I think that's what's gone wrong, clearly. But I'm probably in the minority given what's happened now. I think the more damaging sacking is still 7 years ago sacking Mauricio Pochettino when we did. I was very, very up in arms against that sacking and against the appointment of Mourinho as well, even though he did get us to a final. Didn't even get to see that final. I'm still, if we're talking about detrimental manager sackings, I think Pochettino is probably the one I'd lean towards more. I do think getting rid of Ange was a good thing because I didn't see enough evidence of it being able to go better in the league. We needed to improve domestically and we needed to replace him with a manager who could do that. And because we replaced him with a manager who hasn't done that, it makes the decision to fire him look bad. And I fully agree now that we've appointed the wrong person, but I still think it was the right call to sack him when we did, which is going to be an unpopular opinion, I know.
No, it's fun. Thank you, Mikey, very much. Do appreciate it.
I'm
Charlie,
sorry, Harry.
briefly.
I've got a butt in here. Yeah, Mikey, you are so wrong. I'm sorry. Ange is a hero, all right? He is an absolute hero. He won that trophy in Bilbao, all right?
Was it sustainable, Charlie? Was it sustainable?
Was it sustainable? Okay, compete on all fronts. Would you rather compete on all fronts?
I'm just asking.
Compete on no fronts or compete on at least one? Because right now we compete on no fronts. I mean, yes, the Champions League, but we'll get knocked out of that if we kept Frank by Atletico or Juventus, all right? Ange done it. Ange is an absolute hero. I love Big Ange. He is the greatest manager. You know, I've never seen Tottenham win a trophy in all my life, all right? And Ange done it. I got to go to a parade, all right? I went to the Super Cup final because of Ange, and I had to watch John the Pragmatist, Thomas Frank, coach that game, right? If Ange was there, we'd have won that. Yes,
Charlie,
well in that game.
Where would we be in the table now if Ange Postecoglou was in charge? Honest answer.
We'd be in the top half.
Okay, and is that good enough for Tottenham?
Yeah, is that good enough? We're 16th. All right. Look, At Forest, that is not his fault at all. Okay, Nuno, they've gone from John the Pragmatist to Ange Postecoglou. We've gone from Ange Postecoglou to John the Pragmatist. I'm sorry, you can't blame Ange for what happened at Forest. That is not his fault. That's the owner, Mr. Marinakis, who is a terrible owner. And you know what? I'm going to hold my hands up here. And a lot of people are going to disagree with what I'm about to say. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry, Mr. Levy. He was Tottenham through and through. I'm sorry. Look what's happened without him. The 1 year we did exponentially bad last season, 17th. We won the Europa League. I'm sorry, Mr. Levy. I am. Okay, that's what I've got to say. And you can disagree with me or agree with me. That was not Daniel Levy's fault. Enic and Levy are two separate parties.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that part, but I think that Levy is a puppet for Enic and the Lewis family. That's the thing. And
No.
I think
Because, there was another offer. There was another offer, and they said if we buy the club, we're gonna keep Daniel at the helm, and it wasn't Levy's fault. I'm sorry. If you check my TikTok reposts, you'll see that.
Well, the sackings and hang on. The managerial decisions was on Daniel Levy, right? That was on him, and for me, I'd argue that that's what's been catastrophic to this football club. If appointed the wrong manager and sacked them at the wrong time, he's not just at fault. Absolutely, he's again the puppet. He takes us like Vino is a puppet right now. He's a spokesperson, voice piece, mouthpiece, whatever way you want to put it, right? And he'll take the criticism for that, even though it's not all on him. Same as Levy, but also it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held accountable for mistakes they make. And Levy had no understanding of football and made the same mistake every time with the manager. That's how I feel.
Harry, look, Mr. Levy was a Tottenham fan, all right? He loved the club. The 1 year we did bad, really bad, finishing 17th, we won a trophy. Look what's happened without him. It is so much worse right now without Levy. And I'm like I said, I'm sorry, Levy.
He was part of the team that sacked Ange, though. So
I reckon by then the Lewis family already said you're gonna go. Why do you think he did that interview on the overlap? He knew he was going. He wouldn't have done the interview if he knew he was staying at the club. He wouldn't have done it.
Fair enough.
He probably had no say in. He probably had a say, but not a big say. He probably knew I'm gonna go. And they were waiting. They were waiting for that Bournemouth loss for fans to start singing Levy out again. And then Enic, they were gonna feed into it. They were like, yeah, go on, sing Levy out. Come on, I can't hear you. Louder. We want Levy out. A few days later, he's gone. That wasn't Levy's fault. I'm sorry, it was not Daniel Levy's fault. It is Enic's fault. Enic are a problem, not Levy. If we could have Levy back tomorrow, would you have Levy back? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, well, I think yes. I do not blame Daniel Levy.
You're right.
He built the stadium. He did so much for this football club. He made us so much better. From sugar to Levy. That is. You cannot blame Levy. I'm sorry. Look what's happened.
I agree with you on Enic. You're spot on about Enic. They are the main problem, but it doesn't mean it's the same with Frank, right? Just because he's not necessarily the main problem doesn't mean that he's part of the problem. Levy was part of the problem, just not the main problem. Again,
Levy wasn't a problem. He wasn't a problem. I'm sorry. He made mistakes. The mistake he made.
We need another debate. Do you know what? We've done a Frank debate.
Some of the managers. Do not get me wrong. He made wrong decisions. Pochettino, Mourinho. But Conte,
the same mistake.
Nuno. Yeah, but Frank would have been gone if we had Levy ages ago. He'd have been gone after the Arsenal and the Chelsea game.
That is true.
I think we can. I think we can agree that Levy and Vinay are opposite sides of the same coin, where they're not footballing people making footballing decisions, and one decides to fire managers too early, and the other decides to stay for as long as possible.
Yeah, but exactly.
Yeah, well, I agree with Levy. Honestly, I'm fed up of giving these managers time. We want time. Well, now look, we're 16th. We give managers time.
Charlie, thank you. Go on, Mikey.
We don't give managers that have earned it time, right? So
I was literally took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, basically, like we're right now we're keeping faith with Frank, who has no credit in the bank. Hasn't even shown a style of play that is worth sticking with. But Pochettino, three transfer windows without signings, competed for the league for 2 seasons, Champions League final, didn't give him time, right? Mourinho got us to the cup final, didn't get to play the cup final. And Postecoglou won us our first title in 17 years, didn't even last 6 weeks after that. So whatever you say about whether it was sustainable or not, these people had credit in the bank and actually achieved something for us, and we didn't give them time. Why are we giving Frank time as much time as we have when he hasn't done anything to do that. Even if you want to say Postecoglou was like, tragic for 17th, he got 5th the previous season. So it's not like he had no record of doing it in the league whatsoever. He had done it in the league previously because there was no Europe. And then Europe came in, we didn't reinforce enough. We only signed him teenagers, and the injuries came in. So I mean, there are mitigating circumstances as well.
All right, here's a question. Except for Pochettino not signing a player for 3 windows, Pochettino getting sacked, and Mourinho getting sacked, name one bad thing Levy did.
Staying in the job after moving into the new stadium.
Trying to move us to Stratford and the European Super League.
Yeah, taking a bonus when the team was failing on the pitch.
The Super League never happened.
Being the highest paid manager when we weren't signing,
but not for want of trying.
We weren't signing anyone.
Well, these things never happen.
I appreciate you taking this fight, and you're spot on with Enic. I think if you start to, and don't let me tell you what to do, but if you start to that opinion on Enic that they're the main problem, I couldn't agree more with you. I think they're absolutely spot on. Enic are the main problem. They always were, and they still are now, right? Absolutely spot on, right? And Levy, it wasn't just him, but I cannot get my head around that he's not accountable for anything.
I agree that he was a puppet and that he was doing it for Levy, but ultimately, if you have a job, do you want to lose it? Yes or no? No. So he's not going to be, demanding money, is he? He can't do that.
I can't see anything on the footballing side that Levy done well.
Like, he was great off the pitch until we moved into the new stadium.
So, do you want Daniel Levy to run on the pitch and score a hat-trick or something?
Should have been given the off on the pitch decisions to a capable football operator and left the on the pitch decisions in the hands of the footballing directors who know what they're doing. But even then, he hired people who don't know what they're doing.
Charlie, you know more about football than Levy did, right? You make better footballing decisions. That's a matter of fact. He'd be better on the business side, but I'd rather you decide, and anyone on
that's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yeah, right. And you're spot on, Mikey. You're absolutely spot on.
He's a Tottenham fan. He's a Tottenham fan.
Yeah.
So is Michael McIntyre. Is he going to make a good director of football?
Yeah, but he's not. He's a comedian, not a businessman.
So is Daniel Levy, arguably.
So the point I make about Daniel Levy, right, is that a lot of the time he had directors of football under him, but he didn't trust them with the footballing decisions, which is what he hired them for. And, you have multiple occasions where directors of football were under him, but they left because he kept micromanaging them to the point that we don't have the sustainability. So we have the same foibles of the Gaffer era where, you have Wenger, you have Ferguson, and then they leave the club and then there's no continuity because so much of it is built into key man risk. We have key man risk in Levy, not allowing the director of football doing his job, and we have the businessman making footballing decisions, and as a result we never have a sustainable director of football layer that will allow us to be more like Brentford or Brighton, where we can change managers and it doesn't matter because we have a proper director of football. But that's because Levy micromanaged his directors of football to the point that they left and they were only director of football in name and they never made the footballing decisions.
Absolutely agree with you, but we're gonna move on. Listen, you'll make good points, listen, and nobody's necessarily wrong. That's the beauty of opinion, right? Let's not take the X route and just say that you're wrong, you're right. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, like, and I think you're all put across really well. So thank you very much. But we've got an awful lot still to get through with just a few minutes remaining, so I want to keep it short.
Harry, honestly, I can go on and on and on and on. All right, this is a big, big day. Thomas Frank has been sacked. The fact that this is an hour long, I don't know if you've got plans, but this is a big day for Tottenham. It's what 25 years, 25 managers sacked.
Yeah, exactly. And my schedule's quite crazy tonight. Different pieces in different places with podcasts.
Our managers per season is better than Frank's points per game.
There you go. That's that enough. And also, what we'll say is Tottenham go through managers quicker than this country does Prime Minister, and that is, absolutely saying something. But listen, interim manager then is what I want to talk about. Who's going to come in, because that's the thing, right? Frank's been and gone. We can only talk about it so much. Yes, we know you want to come in, Charlie. We'll come back to you. You made that crystal clear, but that's not going to happen until the summer, absolute earliest. Dustin, can I start with you? Who do you want to come in, and has it got to be interim? Is it going to be permanent? The fact the players have got 5 days off, does that scream to you that they're going to make a permanent appointment now?
So to me, I think we have to go interim, because if you look at long-term managers, the skill set for a long-term manager that has a modern footballing philosophy isn't necessarily the right manager for relegation scrap. There's a reason that, teams that are facing relegation always end up hiring the same managers. We might end up with Allardyce, right? But I think that part of the reason that occurs is because a relegation scrap is a completely different skill set from trying to be competing for the Champions League, trying to compete for the title. The kinds of players you have, the philosophy you have, completely different. So, if we don't want to hobble ourselves by hiring a permanent manager, that might be great for the long term, but we get relegated under them. Then no point, because we lose our players, we lose the manager and everything. So I think that to get the best of both worlds, it's getting a proper interim manager that can inspire the players to play above themselves, which we have to because they're playing under their standard now. Get the players to play above themselves, survive relegation, and it's got to be a person that understands the club and understands the way that we play. Get the players on side, and then we move on to look for the long-term manager. And ideally, in this time, we look for the director of football and get the director of football to choose the manager rather than having businessmen and non-footballing people make that decision again.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Dustin, sticking with you then, who do you want it to be? A lot of fans look at the situation right now, and I think for the emotion sense and something to cling on to, something to get behind, they want someone that loves and breathes Tottenham, Tottenham through and through. And names been thrown out there include Klinsmann, Robbie Keane, load of them out there, Tim Sherwood, Harry Redknapp. These are the type of names that are commonly coming up, this afternoon. Any of them, tempt your fancy, and who's it got to be for you? I agree with you on the interim basis, and I think definitely interim until the end of the season and reevaluate in the summer.
So in my opinion, interim, you don't have many good choices. Like Redknapp's been out for a long time from management, but the reason I would go Redknapp is because he is a manager that can come back, understands the club, and if like why will the players know him? He can talk about managing Modric. He can talk about managing Van der Vaart. He can talk about managing the Champions League. So even if the players don't know who this geezer is, he can come in and talk about who he has managed in the Champions League. And we still have Champions League knockout round to go. So he is an interim that has said he will take the job, has managed us in the Champions League before, regardless of whether he has been doing it. Because right now what we need is vibes. We need vibes to survive till the end of the season. And after that, we can do the long-term appointment. Long-term appointment, whether Pochettino's maybe not strictly my first choice, but I recognize it's something that the fans want. So if it's something that the fans want, I think the important thing about the Pochettino appointment is that the fans will have more patience with him. And if we're going to give time to someone, let's give time to someone that had earned it in the past. The fans will be more patient. Because if you give it to someone else that the fans aren't completely on side with, then that patience is shorter. So even if Pochettino may not strictly be my first choice, I think pragmatically, he's the one that the fans will have the most patience with, which is important.
Okay, Dustin, thank you very much. Mikey, do you agree with Dustin? It's got to be an interim manager. And again, I mentioned quite a few names there, and a lot of people are keen, like I've mentioned earlier. Say it again, Harry Redknapp, Tim Sherwood, very keen to say yes, I'll take the job. Should we be going for one of them, or what do you reckon?
No, I don't think Redknapp or Sherwood. No, definitely not. Redknapp, I see the logic behind. I personally wouldn't, just because he's been out for that long. I understand the emotional sentiment to it, but as the statement sacking Andrew read, we cannot afford to be emotional at this moment. We have to be logical because the vibes are so bad, and we have to be logical in the long term. That's for the summer, and I get the emotional pickup will help us in the derby, in the relegation battle, and vibes are so important, but you have to be able to couple it with sound logic. And I reckon the interim basis is something to go for. I think the club also need to be mindful of their financial situation after paying out Frank so much, despite us not signing many players this season. I think the club don't want to spend too much on releasing a manager mid-contract. So I think they'll definitely go for the interim basis. I think it probably should be. I think I would begrudgingly, I think I would give Heitinger a chance. I know that's quite an unpopular opinion. I would probably give Heitinger a chance, give it a couple of games. Obviously, we've got Arsenal first. I think the Arsenal game can't be read into too much. If we win, it's new manager bounce. If we lose, it's expected. So I think it's the games after Arsenal that you'll be able to look into, because Arsenal are one of the best teams in the world. Let's not get away from that. Unfortunately, I'm going to sound like Thomas Frank here when I say that, but they are. There's no denying that, and I would hate to admit that. But I think, yeah, I like the idea of Robbie Keane, but he's currently doing very, very well in Hungary, and I wouldn't want to pull him away from that. I think he's doing exceptionally well, and for his own career, I would stay. Some of the other options, but for a summer appointment, my money would be on Xavi Hernandez. That would be my.
Okay.
That would be my, because I love Mauricio Pochettino, but the old adage, you never go back to your ex, for good reason. I don't want it to, that, you know, there was a YouTuber I watched, I think his name was Joe Tomlinson from Sky, and he said the shadow of Pochettino looms large over every manager, and his own shadow will loom for him when he returns. He will be expected to do what he did last time. And I'm not saying his age matters, but he is older now. He's wiser. That's true. But he hasn't done well with the USMNT. It would be wrong to say that he has. And I look at it and I just think it's a risk that I wouldn't be willing to take unless we were in a better position. And we're not in a good position. So I like the idea of a Xavi Hernandez, a slightly younger coach, but then you have the issue of no Premier League playing or managerial experience, which is made so a lot of it is made of that. So I won't go on for too long, but I think right now I'd give it to Heitinger. And if it ends up in a situation where Heitinger doesn't do well, look for a stabilizing figure such as I'm going to say it again, we go 3.0, we run it back on Ryan Mason, because there's no point appointing a permanent manager now, because we've got 12 games in the league, more than likely going to be knocked out in the quarters or round of 16 of the Champions League. So he's fighting for Premier League survival, and what manager would come in on a permanent basis without a full summer to work with the players? And also, a very, very, very last thing, Pochettino's style of play demands physical resilience, and we have a crippling injury crisis at the moment. I wonder how many of the players we currently have would fit his style of play, in terms of, we had the Harry Kanes and Dele Allis and Sonny's running about galore, but we have a frail squad, and we also then have to buy players, which we would need a complete squad overhaul for the fourth time in 5 years, and it would lend itself very well to Pochettino's style of play, but I'd be worried about the intensity of that as well with the squad we currently have.
Okay, Mikey, thank you very much. Very well put and a lot covered. Really do appreciate that classy answer. Just want to go through then a few comments before I ask one final question. Peter says, Redknapp with Robbie Keane for me until the end of the year, whereas Chris says Robbie Keane is in a full-time manager's job. He's not leaving to take a number 2 job for 12 weeks. And we've got Boris here who says, but people are acting like Pochettino hasn't been in the Prem for over half a decade. He was literally with Chelsea 2 years ago, and they are under pure chaos before he stabled the ship there. With Boris going on to say that Harry Kane wasn't the player he was before Poch came in. Same with Toby, same with Dele, same with Ericsson. Okay, thank you very much. So contrast and opinion, very fair comments all round from everybody. Charlie, I want to end with you. I know that you're very keen to bring back, and we spoke about him already. That's why I'm not going to go into too much detail for now and save it for other podcasts. But Mauricio Pochettino. So I'm not being difficult. I just want to cover all the bases. And again, more entitled to the opinion. I think it's a good opinion in a way. And, a lot of people agree with you, let's just say, for Pochettino to come back in the summer, regardless of my thoughts. But I'm going to ask you, do you worry about his legacy being ruined? And that's the question I put to you in the debate we had. And what I mean by that is that I don't think that he'd get backed. And then let's say he comes into the club and it's catastrophic. Then he's remembered for the bad reasons rather than the good times he brought originally. Does this concern you at all?
Doesn't concern me one bit. If he comes in and it fails, then it fails. Let it be. We're not going to... The good times never go away. They will never go away, those good times. No matter how bad he does. If he won't do bad, I'm telling you that now, he won't do bad. I want to come on quickly though. This is off the question. And on the interims I'm bringing, is that all right, Harry?
Yes, and with that, no problem at all.
So interims I've created a whole board here of who I think we should get. I don't know if you can see it from the camera. My lighting
read it out.
Dying out. So first one on my list. This isn't in order. There's some I'd love, and I'd say if I love him, and some I wouldn't mind. Big Sam Allardyce. We're in a relegation battle. Dustin said vibes. I want vibes. Big Sam Allardyce, he brings those vibes. Get him on the long throw-ins, Big Sam. Next up, it's not going to happen, but it is I would love it until the end of the season. The Arsenal game, oh my word. Big Ange returns. Season 3 is better than Season 2. We go and win the Champions League. Yes, I want Big Ange back. The next one isn't as much as a vibes one. Johnny Heitinga. We'll move on swiftly. Next up, Ryan Mason. Who isn't up for a Ryan Mason return?
No. 10 away defeats in a row at West Brom, 18th position, and they think they'll go
too
down.
Good for West Brom.
He is the reason they're going to go down.
If
No,
Pep went to West Brom,
too good
failed.
for West Brom. Hang on a minute. Too good for West Brom. He took them down. If he was here now, they'd go down. They'd be down and out.
I'd just like to clear up. I was joking when I said Ryan Mason in my section.
Well, I'm not.
Thank you. Well, you should be. And Sam Allardyce, take him with you.
I love Ryan Mason. Honestly, legend, in my opinion. Next up, Tim Sherwood.
Legend of the Championship.
Tim Sherwood, we look at his win records. He might not beat the big teams, but he did get a lot of wins. And, we need wins. We're in a relegation battle.
Next up, Harry... Or Frank, I think you got an Arsenal shirt underneath there.
Harry Redknapp. Yeah, I mean, my dad asked me last night, we were talking about it. I go, Charlie, do you even know who Harry Redknapp is? And I said, yeah, he won I'm a Celebrity, didn't he? Attacking football, it'd be brilliant. I'd love Harry Redknapp back. I mean, I never saw it happen. I don't think I was even born. But yeah, I'd love Harry Redknapp at the club. Next up, Robbie Keane. I mean, I think he would come. I'll be honest. I think he would. Tottenham's a lot bigger than Ferencvaros, so they nearly beat us last year. He's not very experienced, but again, like Dustin said, vibes. I want vibes. This season's a write-off. If we can just stay up, it would be great. And have fun. That's why I love Tottenham. Next up is probably one that no one spoke about, and it almost certainly won't happen, but I think we'd all agree we'd actually like it, especially with, I hope Pochettino comes back in the summer. Jesus Perez coming in until the end of the season.
That's not an awful shout.
Pochettino taking over in the summer. That's probably one of the higher ones. One of my not so crazy ones with Big Sam, Big Ange, Ryan Mason, Tim Sherwood. But ultimately, I want Big Ange. But I'd love.
How did they get on the list? How did they make the cut?
I love Big Ange. Big Ange at the top. He is number 2 at the USA national team. But I'm sorry, would you rather a number 2 job or a number 1 job? You'd like a number 1 job. Mike Dodds left Sunderland last year as the assistant to come and join Wycombe Wanderers. He was a complete failure at Wycombe, just so you all know. Yeah, I'd like Jesus Perez. I think Redknapp would do well. And then I've got, obviously, you all know I want Pochettino back. He is my dream in the summer. I don't want Big Ange to go on. Even if he wins the Champions League, then I do want him to go on. But, even if we go down, I want him to kind of win the Champions League. But obviously, Pochettino, I want him to come back. I don't think that legacy would be ruined. I only think he'd improve it. And if it was to be ruined, we would not forget what he did for us. And we'd just
fans have short-term memory.
Football fans are fickle. Football fans are fickle.
Very, very.
And to announce his return on the overlap tomorrow. Who says no?
Yes, yeah. Imagine it.
I would say
feeling? Look, guys, I've signed up for an hour podcast, but I'm afraid I'm out, and I've come to announce I'm the new Tottenham manager. Oh my word, I'd be in food tech probably, and I'd be cheering in that louder than I cheered when Frank got sacked. And the last man I'm saying is Enzo Maresca. I would like him to come in. He's the only other manager than Pochettino. Obviously, Pochettino's there. Maresca's about here. I wouldn't mind Maresca at all. That is my list. Harry, I'll take a picture for you, and you can put it as a post if you want. Charlie's managers, the ones in boxes are who we'd like permanently, especially Pochettino, and the ones not in boxes are possible things. Although you probably think this list is mad and don't want to put it on, but look, I think it's a perfect list, and I'd love all those names. But I do not want anyone else other than Maresca or Pochettino. I wouldn't really like Maresca, to be honest. I just want Pochettino at the club, but Maresca I wouldn't mind. But yeah, Pochettino and then an interim. But I think Jesus Perez is probably my best shout. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Mikey, to end with you, Pochettino, if he does come back, will it ruin his legacy? You mentioned there football fans are fickle. I mean, Spurs fans we're on hands and knees begging for Pedro Porro. Now we can't wait to get him out the door. That's a prime example of football fans being fickle. Short-term memory syndrome.
Wait, why do you want to get Pedro Porro out the door? Hey,
Most
I love
Spurs fans. I don't, but most
No,
fans
I
do on
don't.
social media.
This is crazy. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
Romero wanting to get him out the door, and Van der
Porro
Vaart, I
gets
don't get it.
abused every week, and I actually
Every
really rate
game.
him. All right, I quite like him.
Yep.
I think he's not he can't he's not a fullback who can defend, but then again Trent wasn't, and for a period he was the best. That's a lie. Trent can defend, just not exceptionally, and so it made him the best fullback in the world for a number of years. So I think you get a system that benefits him. He can probably become one of the best attacking wing backs. That's besides the point. You want to talk about Poch. I do think, yes, I honestly do, because we're in a situation where you remember last year when we were in a relegation battle and people were saying Ange is not the man you want in a relegation battle. I think that would ring true with Poch a little bit, because we're not going to jump up to Champions League immediately. And if we do, I'd be so surprised if we do. But what I'm saying is, I think Ange is the kind of manager I would have appointed straight after Poch. If we were going to appoint a manager like Ange, he's the kind of person you want to kick on and take the good work someone's done and push on. The argument was with Arteta before he started doing really well. It's like has he gone as far as he can? And if he doesn't win the title this year, maybe he has. You want someone who can actually get over the line. And I think the Pochettino successor probably would have been someone like Ange instead of it being Jose Mourinho. So for now, I don't think Pochettino, wherever we finish in the league, we're not getting Europe unless we win the Champions League, which is an impossibility.
Never lose hope. Never lose hope.
So I think if we're looking at it, I don't see it going well, because we are in such a base. Yes, we need a unifying figure, and yes, it would go well, but I think Tottenham fans are used to the toxicity now. It's a default set, and they're used to the chopping and changing, and I think that will bleed in to Pochettino. And I don't think his tactics will be implemented immediately. I know he got time last time, but there were positive signs. But we had an amazing crop of players. We haven't got anywhere near the squad that we had back then. So I know you're pressed for time, so I'll end it there. But I will say, Pochettino, I just don't see it ending well. And I love him. He was the manager that made me fall in love with this beautiful club. But it's a lesson learned. I think going back isn't going to work. And I don't know. I have an awful feeling that if we do go from it, just wouldn't work out.
Mikey, in a podcast the other day, Pochettino did say he's the best manager he's ever been and that he's going to win the Premier League one day. So I think this is the perfect time to bring him back. I'd also like to add to my list Michael Carrick. He's doing a good job at United, and I don't know if he's going to last there. So at the end of the season, I'd certainly have him. But yeah, Harry, thanks for having me on.
No worries, thank you. Dustin, do you want to say anything on Pochettino before we wrap up? You touched on it earlier.
I want to make a comment on some comments are saying, why do we need a manager that knows the club? And there are plenty of managers.
Yes, please address it.
Yeah, so I think that it's relevant specifically to us because right now we have a relegation dogfight and we have fans that have been, booing players. Players have had disagreements with fans. So I think part of the reason it helps to have a coach that understands the club is that a coach that understands the club can talk to the players about what the fans are like. And, Spurs fans can be fickle. We can boo and cheer in equal volume week to week. And I think it helps to have a manager that knows the club saying, this is what you need to give the fans. And the fans will respond to this. And the fans respond to playing bravely, acting like a protagonist, attacking football, and not, cowering in a corner with 2 banks of 4. So this is the specific reason I think that for the interim, if you get an interim that knows the club, it helps because you need to get the players to play above themselves. And right now, the players are looking at being booed week to week, going, why do I even bother, right? And having a manager that understands club that says, this is how you get the fans back on side, effort, attacking football, bravery, this is what you need to do. I think that helps. And I think that's why having a manager that understands the club will help with the relegation dogfight.
Okay, Dustin, thank you very much for addressing that. And thank you all that have listened and watched and got involved in the YouTube chat or listened as well on podcast platform or got involved because this emergency podcast has been called as a direct result of Thomas Frank being being sacked. And there'll probably be a more emergency podcast to come because we will get, of course, the announcement whether an interim more than likely or permanent manager being appointed. I think we all expect interim at this stage of the season. But whatever we do, it's a risk, and it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't with Thomas Frank, and it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't with the next managerial appointment. But I think we can all come together and say that we need to support whoever is coming in, because we can't afford to be picky about what manager. We can't afford to sit here and go, I'm not going to like him, so I'm not going to get behind him, because the club are in a difficult situation now and could, if we're not already, get dragged into a dogfight down the bottom. I like to be optimistic and go, we're not quite there yet, but with Arsenal and Fulham coming up, our record at Craven Cottage, North London derby, of course, Arsenal fantastic this year once again, it makes it incredibly difficult. It's starting to sound like Thomas Frank with idolising Arsenal there, so we'll end on that note and see where you can find my guests on social media. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on. Tell people where they can subscribe to your YouTube channel. Thank you for your time and your passion, your enthusiasm as always, and your bold opinions.
Yeah, thanks for having me on tonight. Yeah, a great podcast, emergency podcast. I'd love to on the next one when we hopefully appoint an interim coach, one of the ones I named, hopefully Big Ange Postecoglou. You got enough controversial opinions, in my opinion. Yeah, brilliant podcast. Thanks for having me on. I want to say that I saw a comment about fans wanting Pochettino sacked in 2019. I was too young to know you could even sack a manager then. So I was never Pochettino out. The only managers I ever wanted sacked were, I wanted Conte sacked, I wanted Nuno sacked, and I obviously wanted Frank sacked. They're the only 3 of the last 6 I wanted sacked. I wanted Poch to stay, I wanted Mourinho to stay, and I wanted Ange to stay. So yeah, thank you for having me on. Yeah, Ange on the overlap to announce his return, hopefully. Thanks for having me on. Excited for the next podcasts. Yeah, amazing podcast. Thanks for having me on. Charlie Pisani, go subscribe, please. Instead of saying you want me to be the new manager, go subscribe. Hopefully you'll get to 1 million subscribers one day and they'll have no choice but to appoint me.
Love it. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Charlie, thank you so much and appreciate you being part of the channel and coming on. Thank you very much and joining in. Mikey, thank you so much as well for your time. Where can people follow you on social media? Busy day for yourself, as you shared off there as well. So I really appreciate you giving me, an hour and 15 of your time.
No, you're welcome. I know we were supposed to finish slightly 25 minutes earlier, but yeah, you can find me. So I've been in the YouTube chat. That was my @Walker63163. That was me. That's my YouTube name, but you can also find me just at my handle, which is underneath my name. That's me. But yeah, you can find me at my name, Mikey Cooley. That's under my name. That's my Instagram and my Twitter, which I'm trying to be more active on now. But yeah, my Insta just went public. So yeah, go ahead and drop me a follow if you respect or like what I had to say.
And you do say some good stuff, Mikey. Thank you very much, as always. No, you do. Thank you. Dustin, thank you so much. Definitely should take over with Thomas Frank. You've highlighted some of the issues that really cost us and the reason we're 16th this year. But in all seriousness, thank you so much for your time in the early hours in Singapore. Where can people follow you on social media? Because there'll be a load listing and I get contacted by a lot that really like your stuff and want to know where they can find it. Tell people where they can find more of you.
It's on screen because I'm terrible at spelling it. So it's LUMINOIR. That's for X and YouTube. And I've also got a channel where I do tactical breakdowns. The link is in the tag as well when it comes back up. But yeah, the other part is I think that we're talking about the manager now, but the most important thing really is director of football structure. We need to fix what's above the manager so that the managers don't continuously get hamstrung, because we'll continue to have the same arguments about we don't have the players, and that's a thing that needs to be fixed above the manager. So I want whoever picks next manager to be director of football and not these business-facing CEOs that don't have any business making football decisions.
Couldn't agree more. Exactly my thinking there. Thank you. Please follow all my guests on social media. I'm Harry Scarfe, your host as always. Drop me a follow if you wish at Harry Scarfe22 across social media. And the Scarfey Spurs podcast, this is a podcast that's welcoming for everybody. Won't shy away from the difficult questions and conversations, and we'll cover every side of an argument. Thank you very much for coming in. Really do appreciate it. If you want all the latest Spurs news through these difficult times, through these challenging times, and with all this news, please do subscribe if you're listening on YouTube or follow follow me, like I said there, at Harry Scarfe too, because across social media, I'll be providing all the latest news about Spurs. If you don't support Spurs as well, if you go to my YouTube channel, I'll provide news every single day about every Premier League club. But thank you so much. Hopefully, by the next time I'll be speaking to you, we've got the appointment that we all wish, whoever that may be. But a massive come on you Spurs. Thank you all for this emergency podcast.